Welcome to This Old Democracy, a regular podcast where we explore the ideas, movements, and people working to rescue our faltering political system and rebuild American democracy on a stronger, more inclusive, and truly representative foundation. I'm your host, Micah Sifry, and I've been on this beat for a long time, from taking on the problem of money in politics, to writing a book about third parties, to tracking how the internet keeps shaking up the system, and more recently, joining the fight against rising authoritarianism. This podcast is produced in partnership with the Center for Ballot Freedom, a cross-partisan nonprofit dedicated to strengthening democracy. Today, we're talking to Dan Cantor, the chief strategist for the Center for Ballot Freedom. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks for having me.
So, Dan, I've known you now almost 40 years, going back to the 1980s when you were working on Jesse Jackson's presidential campaigns, and then more recently in the years that you started and helped run the Working Families Party in New York. But now your focus has shifted. Tell us about that.
That's certainly true. I was a community organizer, worked for Acorn, was a union organizer for a number of years, and then moved into political work, always on what I thought of as the sensible, social democratic left. But these last years, since stepping down from the Working Families Party, I have mostly worked with moderate, centrist-minded Republicans and independents and Democrats, but especially non-MAGA Republicans, who share a dedication to democracy itself, are very unhappy about the direction of their party, and are looking for a way to do something about it. What we're trying to figure out, and what I think we have figured out, is a way to reform our electoral system, a very modest revival of something that used to exist that we want to bring back, that we think can help push back against some pretty bad trends in our system.
So we'll get to that in a second,
Sure.
But just tell me, is Center for Ballot Freedom, what is the organization? Who's part of it?
It's, as you said, it's a nonpartisan or a cross-partisan nonprofit, really, of people from the center left and the center right, and the dead center, who don't like the zero-sum nature of the two-party system, the two-party doom loop, as some people call it, the downward spiral, or the vicious cycle that makes politics so degraded in the U.S. And so this crowd has come together to explore whether or not we can revive something called multi-party nomination, also known as fusion voting, once legal everywhere, now forgotten. So the real mission of the Center for Ballot Freedom is to revive, re-legalize something that we think could really help the whole country.
Well, let's get into that. So what is fusion voting? Not everybody is familiar with the term.
They definitely are not. No reason they should be. The simplest way is to ask yourself, well, two parties are not failing. People listening to this say, yep, that's for sure true. So why don't you form a third party? And the answer to that is, well, that's kind of stupid. And almost everybody knows it. Third parties are stuck in a box, the wasted vote box or the spoiler box. And there are no other choices. So people can say, oh, we should have a new party, a third party. The rules essentially make third parties in America either irrelevant or counterproductive. That's not the goal. No one wants to do more of that.
So how does fusion fix that?
So fusion allows a new party, a minor party usually. When a new party first starts, it's not a major party, but it allows it to get out of the wasted vote and spoiler box in a very simple way. It doesn't run a standalone candidate, a noble but doomed standalone candidate. Instead, what fusion parties tend to do, it can run a candidate if it wants to, but way more often, it will look at the two major party candidates and say, which one of these is willing to make some commitments to our values, our program, to our voters. Now, you're a minor party, and you know it. So, you're going to deliver 5%, 7%, maybe 10% of the vote. But So you're not going to get everything you want from that candidate, but you say to that candidate, you probably would like to have our 7%. And the way it happens on election day, this is what people mean by fusion, two parties fusing on the same candidate. So in the voting booth, on the ballot, you would see a candidate with two different nominations. They're running Democrat and common sense, or Republican and libertarian. That sometimes happens. And you say to yourself, well, I'm a common sense voter. I'm a rule of law. I'd like to, see authoritarianism blocked a little bit. I'm going to vote for this Democrat. I'm not a Democrat, and I want him to know. I want her to know that I'm not a run-of-the-mill voter. I'm a different kind of person with these values. Voting night happens, election night rolls around, and the Democrat gets 46%, and the last 7% comes in under the Common Sense Party, my party label. I feel pretty good about that, and that candidate's pretty happy to have those votes. So fusion avoids the wasted vote. There are no wasted votes and no spoiler votes if you vote for a fusion
And so
party.
for the type of people you're spending time with now, these political moderates, Republicans who maybe aren't happy with MAGA controlling their party now, this gives them a way to hypothetically vote for a Democrat without having to vote on the Democrat's line, right?
Precisely. And, and there's good reason. The Democratic Party in their part of the world could be, pretty bad. And they want to create a political home and a political identity. They want to have a program. Minor parties usually have a few key issues. The Green Party has its issues. But this Common Sense Party, it's kind of a rule of law, common sense public problem solving. And it just says to the voters, if you're with us, let this candidate know you're with us. Voters love this idea. They know it's not a wasted vote. They know it's not a spoiler vote. In fact, political scientists call it an expressive vote. It's like expressing yourself, injecting a little bit of proportionality into politics. Because if we deliver 10% of the vote, when we come to your office, we're going to have a pretty good meeting.
Right. Now, there's history here, right? This isn't some new idea. This is something that goes way back in American history. You're probably one of the world's experts on this, so talk to us about that.
Not a lot of competition for that title. But in any case, yes, this existed in every single election of the first 120 years of our country's history. We didn't have just two parties. We had two major parties, always, because with single-member districts, that's what happens. But we had many, many, many minor parties, beginning with the Working Men's Party in Philadelphia, and then the abolitionists. There were the Liberty Party and the Free Soil Party and the Anti-Nebraska Party. These were all minor parties. They could run, and they did run some standalone candidates in districts where they could win, and Free Soil definitely won some elections. More commonly, they would fuse. They would cross-nominate the anti-slavery candidate, whether they were a Whig or, in some cases, a so-called Free Democrat. So they really played this very smartly, and that was very important. Eventually, the Whigs collapsed, and the Republican Party was formed. But who went to that first meeting of the Republican Party? It was the Liberty Party and the Free Soil Party, all these guys. After the Civil War, the same thing. It was a way for workers and farmers and debtors and prohibitionists and populists and suffragists to inject their views into politics without asking their supporters to waste their vote or spoil. It's the same argument. Vote for the candidate you prefer, says the Fusion Party leader. Vote for the candidate you prefer under the party label closest to your values. That's a potent thing to be able to say. Voters love it. It's more choices for the voters. It's more information for the voters. It's also information to the candidate. Oh, I got 12% of my vote from, those farmers. I've got to do something about debt relief.
Yeah.
This kind of thing.
Right.
And in today's world, it's easy to imagine why this would be valuable, because these patriotic Republicans, non-MAGA Republicans who are dismayed, they are not going to find their way to the Democratic Party. And we don't want them to stay home. We want them to be able to cast a vote that carries their beliefs, but also is meaningful and constructive. A fusion party allows them. And if the Republicans go back to nominating, more normal people, they would get plenty of those nominations. In the meantime, they probably will look elsewhere.
Right.
And it can only strengthen our society.
Right. So how do you revive it? I mean, we're, it was taken away.
Yeah, fusion
So-
was banned about 125 years ago, around 1900, by the major parties. They didn't like the competition. The Republican Party banned it in the North. They were the dominant party in the North at that time and West. And the Democrats banned it in the South. Major parties can never resist writing the rules in their own favor. But what was banned can be unbanned. And there's a couple of ways to do it. Pass a law, pretty hard to do since the two major parties are in charge of lawmaking. But you can also sue. And that's what's happening. The New Jersey Moderate Party formed, and they sued. The United Kansas Party formed, and they've sued. United Wisconsin, just last month, filed its case. And there's apparently another 7 or 8 states where people are thinking about this. It's a very simple idea, which listeners are saying, well, what's the case? Basically, freedom of association. You should be able to form a political party of your own choosing, nominate the person you want as your champion, and have them appear under your label so voters know who's supporting them, even if that candidate enjoys the support of another party. So we're optimistic. We don't know. We're not in charge. The justices of these various state Supreme Courts, this is only filed in the states under the state constitution, but we'll know soon enough in the next year or so. So it could be, if it succeeds, an enormous change in how we do politics in America, and we think a very constructive one.
So, devil's advocate. Let's say these lawsuits succeed in the next few years. New Jersey, Kansas, Wisconsin, other states, they start opening up the system so that new parties form, and they're cross-endorsing, they're fusing. What if suddenly you have lots of parties? What if you have mischief? You have somebody who says, I'm going to start my own party and sell it to the highest bidder. Politicians might like that. So what's your answer to the people who say this is just going to make the whole process more confusing?
It's a very fair question. People say, oh, it's going to lead to all this clutter and you won't be able. It's too confusing. In fact, the record's pretty clear. States that have fusion voting usually have 2, maybe 3 additional parties. A 4-party system, a 5-party system, that's fine. Right now, you have third parties on the ballot all over the place. The voters don't pay much attention to them because they know that, they're stuck in that wasted vote and spoiler box. When you have fusion, the minor parties are substantially more important. And that does 2 things. It kind of limits how many form because they realize they want to be a little bit bigger. So the third-party energy tends to coagulate or cohere together. But importantly, the third parties, people often say to me, won't this create more extremism, not less? And the answer is no. The third parties, when they nominate someone, that candidate has to accept the nomination of a fusion party.
Right.
You can't nominate someone against his or her will. So if you're kind of crazy, if you're the QAnon party or the defund party, the major party candidates are going to say, thanks, but no thanks. I'm not going to accept this nomination. It's going to cost me more votes than it's going to bring me. People are rational when they're running for office, usually. So in that way, it's sort of self-regulating. And that's been true in our experience. Working Families has probably cross-nominated 10,000, 12,000 candidates over its, last 20 years. They always accept the nomination because they know that there's somewhere between 2 and 20% of the vote in their district is going to come in under the Working Families Party label. So it's kind of self-regulating, I think, is the word.
And just to be clear, when it's legalized, there are also rules in place for how you form a party.
Correct.
What you still have to circulate petitions to
Every
qualify.
State right.
Yeah.
Every state has to have rules. You want it so that you want the barrier to entry to be low enough so people can get there, but not so high that but not so low that it's full of silliness. And you have to bring judgment to bear, but that's not beyond us. We can figure out the rules that allow a sensible multi-party system to emerge. But you have to first take away the ban that forces third parties into this wasted vote and spoiler box. That is why we're stuck in the two-party doom loop.
And just to be, yes, I'm glad you mentioned the two-party doom loop, because if we don't change this, your argument is that this negative cycle that we're in Say. I mean,
Yeah,
the two-party doom loop is a catchphrase, but say more about what is so problematic if we don't change it.
We're gonna, even when power shifts, it's not going to produce the kind of democracy that people want, where we actually solve problems, not because you destroy your opponents. Your opponents are legitimate. Sometimes they even have decent ideas, and you're trying to do what's right by the society. So unless we want to be in this thing where, well, okay, 2 years from now, it flips to the Democrats, and they try to do whatever they can in, short amount of time, which, we don't like to admit it, but that's certainly how some of the people we don't agree with saw some of the stuff that has happened on Democratic presidencies, and Congresses. So if you think about it, a two-party system is by its nature zero-sum. I can only win if you lose.
Right.
A multi-party system is positive-sum. But you have to have more than two contestants to have positive sum anything. So we want to have 3 or 4, and that way there can be more than just one winner, and fewer losers in a way, right? These people they should be your opponents. They're not enemies to be annihilated. And the doom loop is creating this thing where it's a war of all against all at all times. It's way worse on the right than on the left, but it's on both to a degree. And, we need rules that will incentivize coalition and compromise, not rules that incentivize grandstanding and, chest beating.
So it all sounds good. You've made a very powerful case for it. But how do you overcome the opposition that comes from, the two parties like the system they're in. When they win, especially. So how do you overcome their opposition?
We overcome it first by winning these cases. So that's why we have courts. We're glad that we have them, because we believe the justices themselves of these various state Supreme Courts, they're aware of the crisis that's making politics seen as alien to people and failing. But then we also have to build parties that engage people, center, left, and right. I think it's fine. I like the Working Families Party. I think the Conservative Party represents their people pretty well in New York. So you have to build a multi-party democracy. People have to learn that it's possible to actually not have this, negative, partisanship that just seems so disgraceful. And over time, we'll get better at it. So, there's no substitute for, the hard work of building organizations, reaching voters, and so on. But you want to start from a place where compromise and coalition are celebrated. Today, compromise gets you a primary. Bargaining is for losers. We don't want that. We want to have a better system.
Wow. Well, that's quite a vision. And I can see why you would, at this point in a long and productive career, have decided to take on a new challenge. We'll have to have you back at some point, also, to see how things are going. I want to end with one question, Dan. I'm going to ask everybody who comes on this podcast. These are really challenging times for our country. Things seem bleak. So, you work in politics on a daily basis. What gives you hope?
I don't want this to sound self-serving. What gives me hope? So I've done this talk in front of thousands of people over these years, and especially these last 6 or 7 years, hundreds of conversations, probably thousands at this point, with people very different from me. We tease each other. We can go back to arguing about marginal tax rates very soon. But right now we're agreeing on this. When the light bulb goes on and they realize, we could have a system that solves the wasted vote and spoiler thing. We could have a way for new parties to form. They get it. And so I just feel like, okay, well, we have to have more of these conversations, and we have to get some victories in the courts, and then people will see it for themselves, and it'll get better.
So hope is having a solution in hand that can actually get people excited. Well, it gives me hope.
I think so. Listen, it's no magic here, but we're not just going to click our way to freedom. We actually have to talk to each other, have meetings, visit.
And listen to podcasts, hopefully. Well, thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
So that's it for this episode of This Old Democracy. If you found today's conversation thought-provoking, please share it with a friend, leave us a review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more about our work and our partners at the Center for Ballot Freedom, go to centerforballotfreedom.org. I'm Micah Sifry, and I'll be back soon with more stories of the people and ideas fighting to renew, repair, and rebuild this old democracy, because it's ours and it's worth saving. Thanks for listening. Stay engaged.